This week we met two former abortionists speaking out about the hundreds of abortions they performed and what it was that made them pro-life. What went through your mind as you performed abortions?
I think what happens is that after the first one, there is a significant amount of desensitization that occurs. That makes it easier for you to see the second one. And then there's this warped sense of fascination and intrigue and power and accomplishment because there are so few people who are doing abortions. So you were doing something that other people were not able, didn't have the skill to do. So, you know, you completely dehumanize the fetus. And although all your good medical training and knowledge tells you that this is a preborn human being, somehow you start seeing it completely differently. All of a sudden, products of conception, you know, seems to be a much more acceptable term rather than, you know, destruction of human life. And we get to the point where we actually rationalize that what we're doing is promoting women's health, being a woman's advocate for choice. That makes it so acceptable for us to continue doing the procedure. But then you have to go home at night and you know, deal with the reality of what you've done during the day.
For Tony and Seal Levatino, that reality was becoming harder to bear as they struggled with infertility.
When I was going through the infertility workup, I can remember so vividly coming home and locking myself in the bathroom and just sobbing my eyes out. And there were two ironies that were not lost on me. One, here I am married to an OBGYN and I can't get pregnant. The other was, here I am trying to get pregnant and my husband is killing babies.
I remember very distinctly doing, you know, my D&C abortions one morning and literally looking down and saying, gosh, you know, I'm throwing these kids in the garbage. You know, wouldn't even one of these mothers allow us to take her child home to, you know, to love and care, you know, for our own? But of course it doesn't work that way. So that was the first time I really had any doubts. They said they were strictly selfish, but very definitely it was a real disconnect between killing babies in the morning and then trying to find one more number to call to see if we could find a baby of our own in the evenings.
In August of 1978, baby Heather was adopted. Shortly after, Seal became pregnant with the couple's son, Sean.
Things were good until June 23rd of 1984. And Tony was on call that day and had made rounds, and it was quiet, so he was home. We had taken the kids to a local park and had come home and had dinner, and we had friends coming over for dessert and coffee that night. And at 7:25, we heard the screech of brakes out in front of our house. The kids had been playing in the backyard and had wandered out front, and Heather had been hit by a car.
How old was she?
She was 5. She had just finished kindergarten.
What kind of emotions did you experience, Doctor, when you were dealing with the death of your child and how it related to your abortion practice?
The word devastated doesn't even come close to how you feel. But, you know, what do you do after a disaster? You take a couple of weeks off and then you try to get back into your life. And after going back to practice a couple of weeks later, and I don't remember, and see at the time my partner and I were doing second trimester D&E abortions. These are relatively few physicians did them. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, I mean, a D&E second trimester abortion is literally tearing a baby to pieces. And I don't remember when that first D&E abortion was scheduled after her death, but I showed up at OR number 9 at Albany Medical Center in Albany, New York, where we worked, you know, like I had countless times before. And this is routine. This was routine to me at this point. You know, I wasn't even thinking of it as something special. Obviously, I had a lot of other things on my mind. One of the instruments that you use during that procedure is called a Sofer clamp. Basically, it's a clamp that's used to literally dismember or rip these babies apart. And I remember putting that clamp inside the uterus and pulling like you always have to be able to get pieces out. And out came an arm or a leg, and I remember just staring at it in the clamp. And I just froze for a second. I mean, this just absolutely made me sick. And this is something, as I said, that was routine to me. Sick or not, well, as I said earlier, once you start an abortion, you can't stop. You've got to get all the pieces. And I know it sounds strange to people, but it was absolutely true. You know, after going through the second trimester abortion soon after her death and looking down at this pile of goo on the table that used to be somebody's son or daughter, that was just major crisis time for me. We used to make $600 to $700 cash to do a second trimester D&E abortion. And it was 15 minutes to actually do the procedure. That's a lot of money in 15 minutes. You know, but for the first time in my life, I didn't see how somehow I was a great doctor helping out my patients, and I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't even see the $600 cash I just made in 15 minutes. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And it occurred to me that, you know, this lady had come to me, not literally, no patient has ever said this or ever will, but this lady really did come to me and said, here's $600 cash, kill my baby. And I was the kind of person that would look right back at her and say, why, sure, I'll do that, no problem. This was a crisis with a capital C.
When we return, the doctors face the future.
When you understand that killing a baby this big for money is wrong, it doesn't take you too long to figure out that it doesn't matter if the baby is this big or this big or this big or maybe even just this big. It's all the same.